I've got it on pause. Can you just
Unpause it.
Obviously, I'm going to shut this. Sorry. Obviously, my speech is on the rising cost of college tuition. Last summer, I decided to return to school in order to further my career. The first thing I did before applying, though, was to look at the cost, to see if this was even something that I could afford, something that I could continue on and not have to stop in the middle because of a cost issue. But I'm not just talking about tuition, but about what it would cost overall to continue my education with the hopes of obtaining my bachelor's degree in medical technology. This includes tuition fees, cost of living, textbooks, gas to commute, gas to commute to Newton and then later on to WSU. And on top of all of that, I was going to have to factor in the loss of my paycheck, the smaller checks for missing work in order to attend class. Now, I couldn't imagine trying to afford tuition anywhere without already having a decent career started, unless I took out a loan, of course. But having hit the ceiling already after just 3 short years of working in my intended field, there was no way that I could advance in my career without furthering my education, so here I am. I've been studying the cost of education intermittently through the past year, as I'm an adult this time around and my parents don't manage my money anymore. Lucky me. As some of you may know, the cost of education over the course of the last 40 years or so has skyrocketed. If we have any hope for future generations attending college, this has to stop. The cost of tuition is something that directly affects every student everywhere. The cost of tuition has inflated at such a rate that no one can keep up. State funding for colleges has been cut, the median household income has been decreasing, and spending by colleges has dramatically increased. This does not bode well for the coming years. Between 2007 and 2012, there was on average a 30% decrease in state funding for higher education. Out of 48 states, only 2 have actually been able to increase their funding. When this funding is cut, colleges are forced to find a way to supplement this loss of income. Colleges have been forced to cancel programs, faculty salaries have been cut, or the faculty was just cut altogether. Financial aid offered through the college has been decreased, and the ability to maintain college campuses has decreased as well. These decreases and cuts have negatively, in fact, affected the number of applicants as well. After all, who wants to attend a college that is suffering, especially if that program is no longer available to them? The focus for high school graduates has shifted in recent years. College applicants reached an all-time high in 2011 and have been trending downward ever since. High school graduates are opting out of college and going to trade school instead, or just going straight into the workforce. Now, I opted to go to trade school to begin with in hopes that this would be a better road for me to travel, which it ended up being a good choice for me. I was able to figure out where I wanted to work, what field I wanted to work in, and what degree I wanted to eventually obtain. For many people, this would have been enough, but I'm just too ambitious to sit still. But being able to afford college is still a worry for me. Colleges have been spending significantly more in recent years, even with losing large sums from state funding, and increasing college tuition costs, causing students and parents to obtain loans in order for students to attend college. Colleges have become more competitive in attracting applicants by building luxury campuses. These luxury amenities include 5-star dining restaurants, free movie theaters, water park grade swimming areas, and exercise rooms that include climbing walls. As much fun as this sounds, how do you think that the tuition is affected because of these amenities? This all seems excessive to me, but according to Forbes.com, it is a very smart business plan to attract new students in order to supplement the loss of state funding. But with luxuries such as these, I can't imagine that the average person would be able to afford to attend such a university. Now, I have prided myself in my ability to pay for my education thus far without needing a student loan. But WSU is going to be a whole other story. I will have to obtain student loans. There's no way around it. which is also the case for many people. Reportedly, there is around $100 billion per year in student and parent loans to bridge this gap created by the loss of state funding. Now, I have quite a few pictures and graphs, and no one likes talking about money, so bear with me here. I'll try to make this as interesting as possible. Tuition costs have increased dramatically over the years in comparison to the cost of living expenses from 2003 to 2013. This graph compares the increase of costs for clothing, the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, the increase in cost for food and drink, and the increase in cost of healthcare. As you can see, the average increase in tuition over this 10-year period was 79%, and there's a huge gap between even medical care, which is a very fast rising expense. There's almost 40% difference there. The second graph here shows the annual tuition fees in the green and the median household income in purple. Sandy Baum, who has spent much of her career studying trends in college costs, states that as family income fell, borrowing to pay for college took off, while public investment in higher education dropped. That drop has been the single biggest reason for the increase in college costs. So it's not that colleges are spending more money necessarily to educate a student, it's that they have to get that money from someplace to replace their state funding loss. And that's from tuition and fees from students and families. For many people, attending an Ivy League university such as Harvard is their dream. When I was younger, and before I was aware of the harsh reality of money, my dream was to go to Harvard to study law. I was planning on being a lawyer. I figured I was pretty good at arguing with my sister, so why couldn't I do that for a living? But today, Harvard costs on average a whopping $45,000 per year. My dream was completely crushed when I saw that. No more changing my field from medical to law. Does anyone really like lawyers anyways, though? This price tag is 17 times more than what it cost in 1971. If the increase had followed appropriately along with inflation rates, since 1971, the cost per year would be a measly $15,000. Now who's applying with me? This increase is not just with major universities. An increase has affected public and private colleges as well. Private colleges charged around $2,000 per year in 1971, and this past school year, tuition cost around $31,000. For a public college in 1971, for 1 year it would have cost, in today's money, in today's dollars, $500 a year. And during this last year, people paid on average $9,000. After reading these numbers, my immediate thought was, do I really need to advance in my career? And my second thought was, I'm glad I'm not going to Harvard. Going to college should not break the bank. It should set up students to be successfully employed in a career that reflects their studies. But with the increasing cost of education, the state funding cuts, the decreased household income, and the increased spending by colleges, I do not see how in the near future colleges would not break the average person's bank. Tuition increase has got to stop, at least until everyone else can catch up. If the rates keep continuing in this trend, no one except the very rich will be able to afford attending college, even with student loans. I have a hard time imagining now that I will be able to pay off my student loan debt once it has occurred, let alone imagining paying off the cost of tuition 10 years from now. As I showed earlier in a graph, the cost of tuition has risen from 79.5% in just 10 short years. A solution needs to be implemented.